I'm really excited to talk about it because it just resolved this morning. So the backstory is I have these buyers. I've been working with them for maybe about 2 years. A year ago, they identified 3 neighborhoods that they wanted to move into. Their goal was to buy a house that they could move into with their family, but that needed enough work that they could do some forced appreciation. Real estate investing and this idea of buying a house and getting to this forced appreciation is really important to their goals. But it's tricky because they didn't have cash to pay and they weren't getting a hard money loan because remember, they're planning on living in this house. So we were going in with a conventional loan. And the challenge there is you have to find a property that's livable, that needs some work, that we can get at the right price. And we just kept finding these properties that were either kind of too updated for them, where there was not going to be enough forced appreciation, or they were in such bad shape that there's no way it would qualify for a conventional loan. So finally, a property came up that was priced right, that we felt like would qualify for the conventional loan, that they could maybe just like do some paint and change out some floors before they moved in. And then over time, the two of them could make the updates that they wanted to do and upgrade the house and get that forced appreciation. So when we made our offer, we found out that we were up against 3 investors who had cash offers. We decided that some of the leverage that we had as primary homeowners with a conventional loan was that we could go in at asking price. We assumed that these investors' offers were much lower. It was the first weekend. I mean, the fact that they got 3 offers means that they did price it right. But you know, when an investor needs to make a deal pencil out, it's just numbers for them. My clients didn't need to get every single dollar out of this house. They just needed to get it at a price where they could capture the value after they did the work. So we went in at asking price and our offer was accepted. Now the seller had communicated to us that this was an estate sale and the seller was in no position to make any repairs and it was an as-is sale. Now people say that all the time. The North Carolina contract states that every sale is an as-is sale. But a lot of times there's this expectation that there's going to be repair negotiations. And I don't know, 95% of the transactions that I do representing sellers or buyers, there's usually negotiations around repairs. In this case, when we made our offer, in the email, I told the listing agent, my buyers are experienced renovators. They are not afraid of the work that this house needs. They've actually been looking for a house like this, and they are prepared to make an offer as is. And I made reassurances to the seller that we were as-is buyers and our offer was accepted. Well, when we got our inspections back, I don't know, maybe you can guess, but some stuff came up that we couldn't see during our walkthrough. And it actually turns out that this house was not livable in the condition that it was in. We found some pretty serious mold growth in one of the closets. The roof had active leaks. You know, my clients were thinking they would move in, do a little paint, change out the floors, and then put on a new roof in a couple of years. Nope. Roof needs to be replaced right away. Water heater's failing. That needs to be replaced right away. There was one other thing. Oh, there was also a gas leak. So they can't move in with their kids who are like 5 and 2. So right out of the gate, just to get into this property to move in, they're looking at $20,000 to $25,000. So they came back to me after the inspections and they said, look, we're having, second thoughts about this property and we want to go back and negotiate with the seller. Now, my instinct was to kind of, hold the line and say, look, we went in as is. I don't think the sellers are going to negotiate with us. They had all these other cash offers. They had all these other cash offers that are probably chomping at the bit to buy this property. I don't think they're going to negotiate with us because I made assurances when we made our offer that we were going to come in as is. But what happened when I was talking to my buyers was that, it's not just that they wanted $10,000 just because. When I dug a little bit deeper, their interests actually changed. I mean, yes, they wanted a property that they could buy for forced appreciation, but their other interest was like it needed to be a safe and habitable domicile for them and their kids. And when that interest was challenged, then the negotiation, or rather the conversation, had to change. So we talked about it, and I was sitting down this morning to write this email. And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, I didn't really want to write it because I thought that this was kind of a Hail Mary, and that there was no way the sellers were going to work with us after all the assurances that we made. And also, candidly, I was worried about my own reputation. I don't want to be the kind of agent who makes offers and makes promises and says, my buyers are these kinds of people, and then goes back on that because, in this business, your reputation is everything. So I was also worried in the back of my mind that my reputation would be challenged if we went ahead and made this request. But of course, as a fiduciary to my buyers, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do everything in my power to get them this repair concession. So when I sat down to write the email, normally when I do a repair request or when I'm negotiating repairs, I believe that there's a lot of power in specificity. There's a lot of power in the data. And one of the things we always talk about in my workshop is be hard on the problem, not on the person. And when I have lots of estimates and I have all my reports and my inspections, then I sort of build a case as to why we're asking for what we're asking. But in this instance, it was a little bit different. I felt that I should take a kind of a more collaborative approach and not as much of a hard line and not as much of a data-driven approach, but really invite the seller into the conversation about how we can move past this interest of my buyers about moving into the house that was safe and livable. So I worked with our AI agent coach to workshop how this email might go. When I do a repair request, I usually send an email and then I follow up with a phone call. And the AI agent coach, it was really interesting because what it had me do was, instead of sort of challenge the seller, right? Their kind of role in this negotiation is the as-is seller. We don't know what pressures they're under, but we can make some assumptions. It's an estate sale. Maybe they inherited this house. There's not a lot of money available, So taking that into account, I didn't want to challenge them by saying, we need $10,000 or we're going to walk, because I felt like that would put them in a really defensive position. And working with the AI agent coach, what it had me do was kind of lay out a different kind of case, which was, hey, my buyers are experienced home renovators. They are not afraid of the things that we saw during our walkthrough. They knew certain things about the house, like the HVAC needed to be replaced and there was wood rot and water damage. And they knew all that and they are still not afraid of that. But what changed for them were these other immediate concerns that need to be addressed before they can even move in. And of course, I then went on to list them and I said they're looking at almost $25,000 worth of work just to get them and their family into this house safely. And we wanted to know if there was any flexibility on the seller's end to help them move forward with this contract confidently. The buyers believed that a roughly $10,000 concession would make them feel confident about moving forward with this purchase. Please talk to the seller and let me know if you have any questions. Creative problem solving is what I talk about on this channel all the time. I believe that that's how you can get past sticky negotiations, is with collaboration. So I've definitely taken a collaborative approach, but asking that question, is there any flexibility on the seller's end to help my buyers move confidently? I sort of anchored the number at $25,000. And then I did a soft anchor of like $10,000 is what would make them comfortable. Once again, when I sent this email, I kind of was like, there's no way they're gonna come back with anything. They're gonna dig their heels in. The most amazing thing happened. 30 minutes later, the agent called and she said, thank you for presenting that repair request. There's actually a lot more going on with this house than even the seller realized. And they agree that a $10,000 concession is warranted, right up the paperwork. Just like that, no negotiation around the price. I was thinking, man, if we can get $1,000, then that would be a win for my clients. And as I reflect on this, a couple of things come to mind. Maybe the cash offers that they had were super low ball offers. And even with the $10,000 concession, they were still doing better. That's a possibility. Maybe they were thinking of their best alternative to a negotiated agreement, or their BATNA, which was, if we don't give them a concession and they terminate the contract, then we go back on the market, but then we have to disclose that there's a gas leak and a roof leak and the water heater's failing. And so maybe that BATNA was not a good alternative for them. So the $10,000 made more sense. But maybe the collaborative approach that we took, where we invited them into the conversation and we didn't dig our heels in and say, this is what we need. Maybe we treated the seller with a little bit of respect and dignity, and we tried to understand where they were coming from with this being an estate sale, that they're in a tough position, which we acknowledged early on in the email. When a seller says it's as is sale, it's not always about money. It can also just be about the effort and time and the mental load of fixing a house. So putting forth a suggestion that didn't force them to do that or ask them to do that, and asked, is there any flexibility, with the seller's proceeds to do this seller concession? Maybe we framed it in a way and we invited the seller into the conversation in a way that made them feel like they were in control. So it just goes to show, I'm a practitioner of the A.G.E.N.T Advantage and the heart method. I think about this stuff all the time. This was a conflict that I wanted to avoid, mostly for selfish reasons because of my ego and my reputation that I didn't want to tarnish. And what happened was, instead of avoiding it or defaulting to my normal negotiation style, I actually stopped. I took a breath. I worked with the AI agent coach for 15 minutes, kind of going back and forth, helping me clarify my own approach, helping me clarify my client's interests. It helped me empathize with the seller. Then I went back to my email and I changed it and I crafted it in a way that felt authentic to me, but with the help of the AI agent coach that really helped me bridge that collaborative ask around and anchoring it softly at $10,000. And the result was one that I was ecstatic about. When I went back to my clients, they were super excited. They're so happy about it. That's $10,000 in their pocket right out of the gate that they can use to get that new roof on or, solve the mold issue. They are super happy. I think the seller is happy with the outcome. The buyers are happy with the outcome. My reputation was protected. The listing agent's happy. The deal is going to close and it's not going to go back on the market. This experience was a win-win-win for everybody. This kind of approach is what we talk about in the A.G.E.N.T Advantage, Smarter Negotiation with EQ and AI. So if doing a workshop is something that you're interested in or bringing it into your real estate office, just check the link below and subscribe to this channel because I'm talking about real estate negotiation and different deals that I'm working on and other agents that I know working on all day, every day. We love this topic. We love this topic. We see conflict as collaboration here. So I'll see you in the win-win moments.